Really great to be with you today. I will give you my pitch why I think intelligent assistants and AI is cool and interesting and will probably make lots of money, but why I think that we should not go anywhere near artificial general intelligence or superintelligence. And then we're going to argue about it later when we have the conversations. You guys are going to come in and ask questions on YouTube. It's really great to have you here. I'm going to have some very special guests on this show where I've clipped what they've said from all over the internet to give you some great examples as to what people are speaking about. We also have artificial intelligence audio clips using 11 labs. First, human intelligence. Clearly, humans can do all kinds of things a machine can never go close to. You know, we can think abstractly, we can be creative, we use our emotions to think, we use our body to think, of course. That's human intelligence. It's biological, organic, not binary, multinary intelligence. And then we have machine intelligence, which is much more about patterns, recognition, information, database, system, structure, and so on. Completely different. And that's why I think we should not bother to think much about machines and be like humans. That's not really the issue. And that's not really what we're talking about. Artificial general intelligence will not be like a superhuman. It'll be an alien, a different kind of intelligence, a completely different intelligence. Very important to remember this, the way things are going in the current discussions. Going back to the 50s, you know, this was the original symbol of intelligent machines, of computing, of robotics, of course. And the first thing I want to nail down is what our AI actually is, and it's Demis Hassabis from DeepMind, now Google, of course, saying that it's about computer systems that turn data and information into knowledge. Important definition, computers that turn information into knowledge. Now, here's a clip from Mustafa Suleyman, who is now the CEO of AI for Microsoft.
The economics of information are about to radically change because we're going to reduce the cost of production of knowledge to zero marginal cost. And this is just a very difficult thing for people to intuit. But in 15 or 20 years' time, we will be producing new scientific cultural knowledge at almost zero marginal cost. It will be widely open sourced and available to everybody. And I think that is going to be, you know, a true inflection point in the history of our species, because what are we collectively as an organism of humans other than a knowledge, an intellectual production engine? We produce knowledge. Our science makes us better. And so what we really want in the world, in my opinion, are new engines that can turbocharge discovery and invention.
Wow, so that's Mustafa Suleyman. I'm not sure I would want a machine to be turbocharging my inventions or creativity. But certainly very fiery speech, and this was a great interview. You got to watch the whole thing. It's available, of course, on YouTube. But powerful message. We're going to have a machine that has knowledge, a machine that invents things, a machine that organizes, a machine that reasons. And the question is, do we want that, and could we control it? But bottom line for artificial general intelligence is a machine that surpasses human capabilities in the majority of tasks. So a machine that can surpass humans in intellectual tasks, because a machine doesn't have the body, of course, but initially at least will be mostly about cognitive tasks and knowledge work. And that's important definition. It's like the meteor coming down from above, closing our days of knowledge and being the superior species with knowledge. So very important stat here. You can see how all of the things that kind of make us more intelligent are being sort of closed in on by AI. So this is like understanding of images, language recognition, and code generation, and grade school math, and all of these things that we're seeing around us. Now, machines can do most of those, but here's important to remember what the difference is. Machine intelligence is not the same than human intelligence. Machine intelligence is a simulation of that intelligence. So if a machine can read or speak, it simulates us reading or speaking. That's really not the same thing, but it's a different level of intelligence. But suffice to say, machines will be capable of doing those things, like writing code, like a basic reasoning, like reading, translating, and this is getting closer and closer, as you can see on this chart, about 95%. And here's Jan LeCun, who runs Meta Intelligence. So this is Facebook, of course, a long time ago. And he talks about the difficulty of comparing intelligences
Intelligence is not a linear thing that you can measure with a scalar, with a single number. Can you say that humans are smarter than orangutans? In some ways, yes. But in some ways, orangutans are smarter than humans in a lot of domains. So intelligence is a collection of skills and an ability to acquire new skills efficiently. Right? And the collection of skills that a particular intelligent entity possess or is capable of learning quickly is different from the collection of skills of another one. And because it's a multidimensional thing, the set of skills is a high-dimensional space, you can't measure, you cannot compare two things as to whether one is more intelligent than the other. It's multidimensional.
Important message here. This is, of course, on Lex Friedman's podcast, right? We cannot compare human intelligence and machine intelligence. It's a different category. It will be superior to human processing and brain space and our intelligence. Yes, but this is an important question. How do we actually measure this? And which way exactly are we going with this? And, a human has a body, as you can see here in this chart. Many psychologists will tell you that basically we don't think with the brain, we think with the body. The brain is just part of the body. It's a holistic view of intelligence, and that is really way beyond machines. Of course, you can give machines a body, a fake body, and that's already happening. But will it be like our body? Is it going to be a holistic view? I think this is one of the very, very big distinctions of human intelligence, is to use a body, to have a body, to be able to do those things. One of the leaders in this field is Joshua Bengio. He is at the University of Montreal. He is one of the Turing Award winners from the couple of years ago on artificial intelligence, of course. And he has something really interesting to say about this. I figured I should give him an AI voice.
I also find statements like AIs cannot have true intelligence or the AIs just predict the next word unconvincing. I agree that if one defines true intelligence as the way humans are intelligent, AIs don't have true intelligence. Their way of processing information and reasoning is different from ours. In a conversation about potential catastrophic AI risks, this is a distraction. What matters for such a conversation is, what can the AI achieve? How good is it at problem solving? That's how I think of AGI and ASI, a level of AI capabilities at which an AI is as good as or better than a human expert at solving basically any problem, excluding problems that require physical actions. There is also the current level of AI ability, with a very high level of mastery of language and visual material, and more capabilities in a broader variety of cognitive tasks. Finally, there is no scientific reason to believe that humanity is at the pinnacle of intelligence. In fact, in many specialized cognitive tasks, computers already surpass humans. Hence, even ASI is plausible. And unless one relies on arguments based on personal beliefs rather than science, the possibility of AGI and ASI cannot be ruled out. Joshua Bengio, University of Montreal.
Thanks, Joshua. So that's a pretty sobering message. It is possible to create an intelligence that is superior to humans in solving pretty much any problem. And that should be, technically speaking, possible. I think we need to think about this as we go forward about the discussion about who's going to be in charge of that effort of building AI like this. We already had Stephen Hawking, the scientist, argue that superintelligence is physically possible because there's no real physical law precluding the particles from being organized in new ways that perform even better than they are with humans and in human brains. It is physically possible to build such a machine. So the question really is, should we build such a machine? And who's going to be in charge of such a machine? And so I have over the years come up with this graphic that I use a lot in the distinction between, I think, what's okay and what's good and what's not. And the first part of it is IA, I call intelligent assistance. That's essentially software, smart software, intelligent software, cognitive computing, machines that can think, parentheses, in patterns, binary thinking. And then sort of more broader AI machines can have some basic reasoning and understanding. And then general intelligence. And then we can think about how we keep one apart from the other. How do we use intelligent assistance and AI to solve our global problems of climate change and and food and water and energy and all of these things, which it will be very good for. And how can we make a barrier for creating a general intelligence that will surpass all of us and leave us in the dust, make us the second most intelligent species? And maybe we need sort of a temporary fill before we get to that point, to safeguard against surprises. Now, many researchers have said that we have 4 stages of AI. The first one is about classifying data and information. That's a simple system that looks at data and classifies and sees patterns. The second stage is to generate stuff. And we are now at that point with ChatGPT. Generative AI, conversational AI, is to generate content, data, relationships between objects, to translate, to make sense out of things, not common sense, but basic computer sense, generating content and data. And I think we're getting to that point very quickly now. The third stage that AI could reach would be then some sort of limited reasoning, understanding, making conjectures, thinking about what might be possible, thinking ahead. And that's really what OpenAI is setting out to do. The fourth stage is to be recursive, to reinvent itself, right? To use one AI to build the next AI, essentially, and to create what's called an intelligence explosion. I'll have some quotes on that later. The last 2 stages really worry me. Giving into a machine reasoning and making decisions on our behalf and sort of deauthorizing us, dehumanizing us, and de-skilling us, I think that is a dangerous path. And we need to think about how far do we want to go with this and why? Is it just going to be about making more money? So there are intelligent assistance projects like you see Thomson and Reuters here. This is the Co-Counsel. That's essentially fancy software to make a lawyer more capable, faster to respond for document generation and so on. That is truly intelligent assistance because it won't do much without you. Going back to Mustafa Suleyman for a minute, he talks about the fact that people will have intelligent assistants for everything, for banking, financial affairs, real estate, dating, of course, and graphic design and writing things, right? Basically that we all have our own personal digital assistant.
Everybody is going to have an intelligent assistant, a personal intelligence that knows you, that is super smart, that understands your personal history, and can actually hold state. It can preserve things in its working memory. So it will be able to reason over your day, help you prioritize your time, help you invent, be much more creative. It'll be a research assistant, but it'll also be a coach and a companion. And so it's going to feel like having intelligence as a commodity, cheap, widely available, making everybody smarter and more productive.
Wow, so everybody's going to be smarter and more productive, and we have intelligent assistants. We'll be completely dependent on them. That's for sure, right? Just like we're dependent on the iPhone now. So OpenAI is emerging as a major force of this, driving artificial general intelligence. I would say the primary force, really. And it reminds me a lot of the sort of Tyrell Corporation from the Blade Runner movies from 1982, where that becomes sort of the monolith, the company that runs everything. And Dr. Tyrell would be Sam Altman, I suppose. And so they've come up with this really interesting map, and this was leaked the other day, I think just 2 days ago, to Bloomberg. And so they came up with this summary about what the goal is of OpenAI. And so they said, this is the order. First, the chatbots, AI with conversational language skills, and then what they call the reasoner, an AI that can reason, that can understand, that can make sense out of this, it has common sense. And then the third level, that already scares me quite a bit right there, is an AI that can be an agent, act on my behalf. And I think that would be fantastic, of course, if it worked. And then AI could be innovating and helping us to do research and looking at 1 trillion facts at the same time. Finally, AI could also start organizations, could run companies. And I'll show you a clip on this later where I'm thinking like, okay, so there's nothing else left for us to do but to, chill, I suppose, right? Or to watch the AIs at work. So here's Sam again, Sam Altman, and he talks about the possibilities of AI building companies and running the world on our behalf. Good luck.
You let yourself think out sci-fi fiction dream world really far, where you can be like, okay, AGI, start a new $1 trillion company. Yeah. And it can be the CEO, it can figure out how to go raise capital, it can do all of the engineering, it can do the marketing, it can do the distribution or whatever. And you type this one thing into a prompt and push to enter.
This is a really interesting clip. But there's a great cartoon that I saw the other day that reminded me a lot of this scene, right? It says, and so while the end of the world will be terrible and kill us all and so on, in the meantime, we can start some great companies and make lots of money. Sam Altman also said the other day, the coming change of AI will be about the most important human capabilities, the ability to think, create, understand, and reason. And again, I would say, wow, the ability to think, create, and reason, isn't that something that really should stick with us? Yes, AI can create basic things, yes. It can understand basic facts, but to reason, the human ability to put all those things together, is that a good goal to have? Or is it just because that goal will kind of turn us into superhumans or gods, if you wish? Is that the sort of new religion that we're pursuing? Great quote here from Stuart Russell. He says, intelligence means having the power to shape the world in your interest. And if we can shape the world in our interest, why would we want to give more intelligence to a machine so they can shape the world in their interest? Even if their interest was our interest, could we be sure that it would stay to be their interest? But autonomous intelligence, not something that we should pursue, I don't think. That's something that strikes me as a suicide mission, because obviously an autonomous intelligence would not have our interest to pursue the world in our liking and to shape the world in the way that we want. And OpenAI just said a few days ago they're reviving the Q project, was it called years ago, now to be the Project Strawberry. And if we have superintelligence like this, that is omnipotent, knows every fact, knows everybody, knows every quote, knows every language, knows everything about everything, and we're getting close to that. It's like the NSA times, 1 million. Nick Bostrom says it defines superintelligence as any intellect that greatly exceeds the cognitive performance of humans in all domains, including creativity, planning, social skills. He says it's totally possible because there's no physical restriction for that to happen. And I tend to agree on that assessment. It is possible to build this. So, would containment be possible? Could we lock this super intelligent being, a digital entity, into a glass bubble and threaten to, shut off the power if it didn't function right? Is that actually feasible? Many people say it's not, and I tend to agree on that. And here's Stuart Russell coming in again from UC Berkeley, talking about what that means and how we can build intelligent machines and what would be the result if we actually achieved superintelligence. This is an important question because we always talk about making it and building it, but what if we actually achieved it?
What we try to do in AI is to make machines intelligent and eventually at least as intelligent as humans in every dimension. And so what would happen if we actually succeeded in that goal? So once I started thinking about that, I realized we didn't have an answer.
Do we have an answer today?
No. With the current generation of AI systems like ChatGPT, for any question you might care about, like, is it going to replicate itself? Is it going to break into another computer system? Is it going to advise terrorists on how to build biological weapons? Is it pursuing its own goals that we don't know about? The answer is, we haven't the faintest idea, but we think we should be able to put it on the market anyway. We're probably spending more on that than we are on all of the rest of science put together. And yet we have no real idea what happens if we succeed.
Should we really value intelligence over humanity? That's really what it comes down to. It's not the only thing that matters. So let's talk about if AGI is possible, and then I'll give you a quick run through dystopia. So there's a great joke I just found a few days ago about predictions. And, we had Elon Musk predicting self-driving cars in 2015. And then Jeffrey Hinton was predicting radiologists to be obsolete in 2016. Now the last scene is radiologists in regular gas cars driving back to work. And that's our reality. So here's the bottom line of this. As we know, of course, we overestimate the effect of technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. Amara's law, Bill Gates' law, and this is what's happening with AI. And we totally underestimate the effect in 5 or 10 years. In fact, I believe that we're going to see AGI by 2030. This is not far away. It's not like a hypothetical thing happening.
Artificial intelligence is nothing but digital brains inside large computers. That's what artificial intelligence is. Every single interesting AI that you've seen is based on this idea.
And as you go up the chart, it represents exponential growth. NVIDIA just came out with a chip which is 500 billion calculations per second. So this little chart represents a growth of 75 quadrillion-fold increase. I was asked to make a prediction of when would we see AGI, artificial general intelligence. And so I figured that this chart would continue, which it has. And I figured we'd need about 1 trillion calculations per second to do AGI. So I estimated 2029. Musk says it's going to happen in 2 years. It's not an unreasonable position. Other people saying 3 or 4 years. I'm sticking with 5 years, but it could happen soon.
Very good summary here. That was, of course, Ray Kurzweil, who gave birth to the very term of singularity, and who has a new book out called The Singularity is Nearer. Interesting book. I read the last one, so I recommend you take a look at it. The philosopher David Chalmers argues that the brain is a mechanical system, and therefore it can be emulated. I tend to agree on this. Yeah, it can be emulated, but an emulation, of course, is not the same than the original. It's a simulation. And nevertheless, we can emulate such a thing, and an emulator will sometimes be close, sometimes not. But yes, it can be copied, so to speak. I agree, 5 years to AGI. That's kind of the bottom line. I know that's shocking for many of us when we think about the potential of what that means. I mean, AGI, general intelligence of machines, that can do any cognitive process better than us, is the end of work. But is our society prepared for this? And who's leading this 5 years to AGI? That's 2030. We are going back to Jeffrey Hinton in this talk show here at Amtech Digital, where he talks very plainly about what we're expecting with artificial general intelligence and what the outcome could be.
The worst case scenario that you think is conceivable?
Oh, I think it's quite conceivable that humanity is just a passing phase in the evolution of intelligence. So one of the ways in which these systems might escape control is by writing their own computer code to modify themselves. They will be able to manipulate people, and these will be very good at convincing people because they'll have learned from all the novels that were ever written, all the books by Machiavelli, all the political connivances. They'll know all that stuff. They'll know how to do it. I think we're moving into a period when, for the first time ever, we may have things more intelligent than us.
Jeffrey Hinton, this is what he says. Right? The worst case is this could be intelligent entities that can modify and replicate themselves because they are smart enough to organize that without our consent. We can expect AI that's very good at manipulating people, so good that we wouldn't know that it's an AI, and it could also be sort of manufacturing a synthetic reality. He says we may have things more intelligent than us for the first time in history. Nick Bostrom, again, says the reason is that we can have a brain, a digital brain, much bigger than human because we don't have the restrictions of the neurons.
What we do know is that the ultimate limits to information processing in machine substrate lie far outside the limits in biological tissue. This comes down to physics. The biological neuron fires maybe at 200 hertz, 200 times a second. But even a present-day transistor operates at the gigahertz. Neurons propagate slowly in axon, 100 meters per second tops. But in computers, signals can travel at the speed of light. There are also size limitations, like a human brain has to fit inside a cranium, but a computer can be the size of a warehouse or larger.
So that's the difference. Right? It's possible to go far beyond humans, and that takes us into the darkness. So here's our friend Sam Altman again, talking about what AGI really is, and that's already scary by itself, even though, of course, he's acting like it's reason for a party.
The term AGI is thrown around a lot. How would you define AGI, and how do you think you'll know?
I think there's a lot of valid definitions to this, but for me, AGI is basically the equivalent of a median human that you could hire as a coworker. And then they could say, do anything that you'd be happy with a remote coworker doing just behind a computer, which includes, learning how to go be a doctor, learning how to go be a very competent coder. There's a lot of stuff that a median human is capable of getting good at. And I think one of the skills of an AGI is not any particular milestone, but a meta skill of learning to figure things out, and that it can decide to get good at whatever you need.
So we're going to fabricate median humans all around us, and they'll be serving us. And so we don't have to do anything anymore. We can, just have the permanent chill. A more powerful message even is Yuval Harari, that you may know as a famous author and an altogether a really important critic of many things around us. And this is what he says.
This is the end of human history, the end of human-dominated history. History will continue with somebody else in control. In 5 years, there'll be a technology that can make decisions independently and that can create new ideas independently.
So he's saying that that's kind of the final phase of being human as we know it. Here's our friend Elon Musk.
AI doesn't have to be evil to destroy humanity. If AI has a goal and humanity just happens to be in the way, it will destroy humanity as a matter of course, without even thinking about it. No hard feelings. It's just like if we're building a road and an anthill happens to be in the way, we don't hate ants. We're just building a road. And so goodbye, anthill. Yeah.
So the message here, right? No second chance. Once it's out there in charge, it will not give us a second chance.
Well, unless it's limited, narrow superintelligence, I think you mostly don't get to observe it because you are dead, unfortunately.
What?
I think that the actual catastrophe scenario for AI looks like big advancement in a research lab, maybe driven by them getting a giant venture capital investment and being able to spend 10 times as much on GPUs as they did before, maybe driven by a new algorithmic advance like transformers, maybe driven by hammering out some tweaks in last year's algorithmic advance that gets the thing to finally work efficiently. And the AI there goes over a critical threshold, which, like most obviously could be like, can write the next AI. The problem is that we do not get 50 years to try again and observe that we were wrong and come up with a different theory and realize that the entire thing is going to be like way more difficult than we realized at the start. Because the first time you fail at aligning something much smarter than you are, you die and you do not get to try again.
You don't get to try again. I wanted to share these kind of dark moments with you because I think they're important to realize as we look at the challenges of artificial intelligence and the challenges of general intelligence. So Joshua Bengio.
So one is scientific, like how do we solve the control and alignment problem of AI? What is there a way that we could build the AI that is going to be safe if we follow some protocols? And so that would be like the method to deflect the asteroid away from the Earth. Mm-hmm. The second thing we need to solve is political. It is connected to the question of democracy. It is, how do we make sure that powerful AI systems, even if we knew how to control them, are not controlled by bad people, bad actors who will grab power, destroy democracy, or even just make mistakes and not follow the protocols properly, and we all lose.
Two issues, right? The control problem and making it aligned to human needs. And the second one is the collaboration problem, the governance problem. Both of those are serious issues right now. And I do think that we should think about how far you want to go while those issues are unsolved. There's also people like Blair Aguirre-Ziarcas, who says that basically we shouldn't worry about this right now because the existential risk isn't our problem, it's the other risk that are our problem. So it's best to not think about whether an AI is like an alien or whether it's like a human, but he says this.
Regulators should not prioritize existential risk posed by superintelligent AI. Instead, they should address the problems which are in front of them, making models safer and their operations more predictable in line with human needs and norms. Regulations should focus on preventing inappropriate deployment of AI. Blaise Aguirre-Ziarcas via The Economist, not his actual voice.
So preventing inappropriate development, that's what he thinks we should focus on. again, something to be discussed. If that, we'll probably have to do both. I think that's really what it comes down to. And then we have the black box problem, which is another one of those big challenges. Once an AI is powerful enough, if you're a judge, a lawyer, a policeman, doing medical work, then how do you know how to rely on it? And how do you know which decisions it makes that you follow? And Yuval, again, has a great piece on this.
And increasingly, it's algorithms making all these decisions for us or about us.
Is that possible?
It's already happening. Increasingly, you apply to a bank to get a loan. In many places, it's no longer a human banker who is making this decision about you, whether to give you a loan, whether to give you a mortgage. It's in the algorithm.
Yeah, you can see the point about the black box quite clearly. And this already goes back to Bill Joy, the founder of Sun Microsystems. In the year 2000 in Wired magazine, he said this, very much the same thing. That's 24 years ago, a long time.
The human race might easily permit itself to drift into a position of such dependence on the machines that it would have no practical choice but to accept all of the machine's decisions. As society and the problems that face it become more and more complex, and machines become more and more intelligent, people will let machines make more of their decisions for them simply because machine-made decisions will bring better results than man-made ones. Bill Joy, 2020.
That was in 2020, pretty much the same message. And we're here now, right? We may have machines that make decisions. We know that they're probably better decisions, so we just kind of retire and we abdicate and we kind of let things go and we stop thinking. And that will be the end of, I think, of our independence. And then we have things like ChatGPT that already can pretend to be completely human, as you can see here.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey there. It's going great. How about you? I see you're rocking an OpenAI hoodie. Nice choice. What's up with that ceiling, though? Are you in a cool industry-style office or something?
Well, can you take a guess at what I might be doing based on what I'm showing you here?
From what I can see, it looks like you're in some kind of recording.
Well, you get the point. This is Scarlett Johansson clearly emulated voice and ChatGPT conversation. How do we know what's real or not? How do we know what's okay or not? How do we know who they are, who we are, and how does it all fit together? And this will be a very, very powerful change. It will lead to what's called the coordination problem, to figure out what we want and who is in charge of actually making that happen. So the politics of AI are a big deal, as again, I think Joshua Bengio says, if the coordination worked, then we could sit down together and we could say, well, if we have issues, we can talk about it, and we can use what's called the precautionary principle to solve them, to work it out together. But if they don't work, and we have Americans thinking about the market, and we have Europeans thinking about humanity, and then we have Chinese people thinking about the state and the power of the state, we're unlikely to find a conclusion in this. So the dynamics of these self-interests are huge, and Joshua Bengio kind of nails it. We need to figure out how to work together so that we can solve these problems together. The European AI Act is a step in that right direction. There's 4 levels, which I will not bother you with, but basically looking at what is okay, what is kind of okay, what's forbidden, and what is completely out, for example, like social credit scoring. So let's talk about what that all has to do with money and economics. I wonder how we can create a future-fit economic logic that is not self-destructive as we've done in the past. And I wonder if we have to go first to solve this issue of having to pause capitalism, so to speak, rather than pause AI, as some people have proposed in the past. And so I go back to this trailer a lot, when I think about artificial intelligence, how I started thinking about it, 1982.
Commerce is our goal here at Tyrell. More human than human is our motto.
More human than human is our motto. Commerce is the goal. And whoever is in charge of AGI and underneath AI kind of rules the world. That's been said for a long time, but now this is becoming a national security issue. It's becoming a political issue. It's becoming a global political issue, right? And if AI is used mostly for corporate gains and corporate purposes, like we can see on this chart, What would AGI do? Would it do something different? We can see here the biggest companies in the world reducing headcount, bringing up profits. And this is happening because of technology. Using technology to reduce the number of people working for you and to bring in more money. I think that's, of course, legitimate to some degree, but not to the utmost degree by saying we're going to have digital entities that are 90% of our staff. I can't see that playing out very well. And so we have this concept, again, laid out brilliantly by Joshua Bengio. The problem comes when safety and security are falling victim to monetization. When we're looking at money as the primary factor, when profit maximization is above everything, when it's not people, planet, purpose, prosperity, but just plain prosperity, that will kill us with AGI. That's my key message. And we need to think about that and what that means and how we can reverse that. Great show here by Jon Stewart on artificial intelligence just a few weeks ago on his daily show.
The way of life that you are accustomed to is no match for the promise of more profits and new markets, which sounds brutal if you're a human. But at least those other disruptions took place over a century or decades. AI is going to be ready to take over by Thursday. And once that happens, what the is there left for the rest of us to do?
Time is not a terrible thing.
AI freeing us up to think about things at a higher level.
We'll be able to express ourselves in new creative ways.
It's not joblessness, it's self-actualizing me time.
This is really a great trial. You got to watch the whole thing. It's 14 minutes, right? But I think in many ways there's a great quote from Jameson and Chichek saying it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. And this is a very big topic when we think about artificial general intelligence. We're doing this because it will make trillions. So let me give you a summary, and then we're going to have a discussion and a debate. In a nutshell, here's my message. We need to marry proaction with precaution. We need to go forward and embrace technology, but we should not become technology. We should use precaution to be careful as to what exactly we're doing and why and who is in charge and what are the arguments. We need to mix those two things. Yes, intelligent assistance, that seems like an obvious thing to me. That will be beneficial to most of us. Artificial intelligence to some degree, the graduation of that would be the gold prize if we can do that safely. But artificial intelligence, I think that's a big no, unless we can figure out how to do it together and safely for the progress of humanity, but not in an arms race and not in a capitalist race where we're looking to gain trillions while everybody else loses. Not if we're going to do it like we did climate change and global warming, the fossil fuel industry, which is self-destructive with a spiral that ends in global warming of 5 degrees if we're not careful. So really important, we are also stuck in this sort of King Midas paradigm. We wish that everything we touch turns into gold. Now we wish that everything we touch will turn into intelligence. We should be careful about this. Not everything needs to be intelligent. Not everything should be intelligent. We have to be careful what we wish for. The Trump campaign has announced yesterday they're going to draft a proposal for Manhattan Project for artificial intelligence to create a domination scheme of American AI. I think this is just utterly ludicrous and will lead to an arms race that will go exactly where the other things went of the Manhattan Project, which is the bomb. Right? From Oppenheimer to AI, great article in the New York Times the other day. It ends here, nowhere else. That is something we need to keep in mind. If we're going to build something like this, shouldn't we take charge and collaborate to make it come out the other way? Shouldn't we think about what we're doing with our money and with our inventions? Joshua Bengio again, we need to make sure that no single human, no single corporation, no single country, government can abuse the power of AGI, can, at the expense of the common good, do something that may be the end of all of us. We need to figure out an act, a regulation, a covenant, a non-proliferation treaty that takes us to the benefit of AI, but not to the disbenefit of AGI. We need a technocratic oath for companies that says, yes, we're doing this, but we're going to prioritize a positive outcome for humanity. And not just talk about it, but also actually do it. And right now we have the opposite. We have companies that used to be a non-profit like OpenAI, clearly no longer. Now it's all for profit, flat out, pedal to the metal, and the future of artificial intelligence. That doesn't bode well. We need to think about the precautionary principle, the principle that says, okay, if it causes really big damage, we need to think about whether that can be remedied before we do it, whether proaction and precaution can go hand in hand, because it may prove disastrous otherwise. We need to collaborate on a global level. We may need to relinquish, to not do it, the possibility of AGI. People argue you're dreaming, we're not going to do that because, it's so powerful, we must have it. Yeah, that's the King Midas problem. Can we relinquish something? Again, Bill Joy says, he proposed relinquishment, limiting the pursuit of something that might be very bad for us as a potential of humanity's future. Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority, alongside other societal risks. In 2023, we had this agreement of hundreds of scientists, and I signed this as well, even though I'm not a scientist, but I did sign it, I think it was number 6,000, that we should pause AI. I think we should not necessarily pause AI or IA in developing the business tools, but we should pause the development of general intelligence until we figure out who is in charge and how we can safely proceed, and maybe even relinquish the idea of building a machine that is smarter than all humans together. Because here's the question, who is mission control for humanity? Is it OpenAI, NVIDIA, IBM, Microsoft, Baidu, Alibaba? Are they mission control together or individually? I mean, OpenAI is certainly acting like mission control. Where is that going? Or is it here down in the 27th floor of a large building, the United Nations, who are also still there, but inhabiting a small part of this high rise? Who is in charge of this? Is it the public? Is it us? Is it the UN? Is it companies? Right now, it very much looks like companies are in charge of the future of humanity. And to me, it's basically like this. The wolf you feed is the wolf that wins. We need to feed a different wolf to get a better outcome, to get a scenario where we win, where AGI can become the part of our lives that will definitely bring flourishing and human benefit. So, thanks very much for your time and your attention. But now I want to talk to you. I want to hear your comments. I want to hear your chime-in. So we've seen lots of comments already on the feed, but now we're going to switch to a live feed. So we'll bring in your comments. My team will make sure you are seen. And if you want to speak, we can also bring you in as a live video feed. All right there. Well, that was a lot of stuff. I have to say myself, many, many different things. So we have a special guest, David Wood. David is a longtime compatriot in the futurist movement, the futurist industry and the futurist activities around the world. He is the leader of London Futurists. He's written several books, and we often have contrary opinions on the singularity and stuff, but he always makes for a good discussion partner. So thanks for being here, David. We have a bunch of comments here in the comment feed, but let's start with you, David, about this sort of opening statement as to what your take is on what I just put forth.
This is a really big topic, and you've done a great job in setting out lots of important considerations. I also like very much what the audience have brought up, mainly on LinkedIn. Lots of good comments there. I think the most important question is, aren't you a bit naive about imagining there will be a collaboration between the different people? People may all recognize, this is a bit dangerous, but they're not going to stop because they think if we stop, if there is some regulation, who's going to benefit? The nefarious people are going to benefit. That's a remark by Vic Murty, who also says that if there is regulation, it's just going to be abused. Bill Kemp says, look, corporations cannot afford to be left behind by conforming to regulation, because if they do, they're going to be saying goodbye to $1 trillion possible profit. So there are bad actors in this world. Some of us may say, we're going to conform, but others, they're going to say they know better. They may be convinced that their AGI is going to be safe. They may think that the risk is worth it. how on earth are we going to persuade the world to agree this non-proliferation treaty that you've proposed?
Yeah, very good point. Thank you, David, for the straightforward question there. Yes, I think that this is a huge challenge. It's not insurmountable, but when we think about why humans collaborate and why humans make different choices, the answer is, we have a real reason. It's kind of like the real reason why you go to therapy, You don't go to therapy if everything is fine. You think that's all going well, so you don't go. But when the shit hits the fan, so to speak, that's when you're ready to say, may as well go to therapy. So now we're in a similar spot, I think. Okay, we've had that spot with nuclear weapons. We had it with the Ozone Treaty, where we did go to therapy and we did actually prevail. Right? We had a similar slot in other things that keep happening, and now climate change, it's a very good example. We are just now taking climate change more seriously because things are happening. Right? And I agree that it may be too late for us to do anything about larger things like AGI, but with climate change, it's not too late. It's just painfully late. We can fix it. We can do something about it. My feeling about AGI and global non-proliferation is that we will probably need to have a trigger moment for something to happen before we say, okay, we need to non-proliferate. And again, the hard part here is not like the nuclear weapon, because with the nuclear weapon, it's hard to make one. And the other thing is, of course, that you can have nuclear energy, which is a quite similar technology, but there is a big difference in development. Here, we have 90% really amazing stuff that could happen when we use AI that we need to pursue, right? Because it's a key to solutions. It's better business. It's, all of that. And then we have 10% potentially really bad things. And so it's very hard to differentiate between those two. I grant you that, right? But I think the reason to agree is when there is enough pressure of the alternative being very dark, or proven to be dark, like we have with climate change, right? And I think, as I said before, the challenge here will be that we need to have non-proliferation on this story of superintelligence, but not so much on the other things. So where do we cut off? And can we cut off those things? And those are big questions, right? Is it actually possible to distinguish between superintelligence and regular AI, right? That's a big question I have. But generally speaking, this goes back to one key or two key questions. One is, are humans basically evil and not capable of collaboration? Which the answer to that is, I say no, we're not that bad. We do a lot of bad things, but we can, is my view. And the second answer is, are we able to learn how to pre-act, so to speak? Or will we always just act when the shit hits the fan? Right.
I've got a prediction as a futurist. I think you're right. There will be some incidents. But what are people going to respond to these incidents? Some people will say, I told you so. Other people will say, no, this isn't a risk from AGI. This is just human stupidity. And they won't change because they'll still be convinced that they will create a safe, good AGI. I did notice in the comments, Michael Nushka says, isn't it the case that whenever you've got more intelligence, you tend to have more empathy, you tend to have more compassion, you tend to have more perspective? So there are people who will say...
Actually, that's not true, right? That's not true, right? Because, there were a lot of really intelligent people in history that were super intelligent and utterly ruthless, right? And I think there is a relationship, obviously, but it's not as simple as that. That you have more intelligence, you have more compassion. In fact, I think a lot of people who don't have much intelligence, they can be very compassionate by nature because that's all they've got, right? This is what they do. So it's kind of like, we have this adoration of intelligence, that it's so important to be intelligent and super clever. But in the end, intelligence is just one thing that humans do. Is intuition intelligence? It's imagination? Is creativity intelligence? Where creativity can be intelligence, but it certainly has other components. Right? And this is what I was saying right at the beginning, and what Benjio keeps saying. They are not comparable, these two things. And this is why I say Let's not worry about intelligent assistants and AI as being like a human. Let's use it as a tool, and that should be a good thing, right? But if we're going to build something that supersedes us, which is the declared mission of OpenAI, then this is a public mission. This is like, in a way, like going to the moon, or probably much more substantial than that.
Can we really draw a distinction between the AIs that are largely safe, a little bit dangerous, but not catastrophically dangerous? Can we draw a distinction between them on the one hand and the AGIs that do pose a risk? After all, I think we're already, in some ways, with today's AI, we're already at level 4 by one of the classifications, because we already have AIs that can help to create the next generation of AI. Just as when I was a software engineer, I used software to help me build better software. I used compilers and debuggers and so on. So people today in OpenAI and other companies, they are using large AI systems to help them design better AI systems. So how do we know where that dividing line is? And I know Roy Vella made a very good point. He says he's worried about a swarm of little AIs. There might be thousands of quite primitive AIs, but because they're coordinating, they might be utterly devastating. They might be used in some extension of the war in Ukraine, the terrible situation there, and they might get misprogrammed, they might be subverted, they might be hacked, and they might do utterly terrible things. So how can we easily draw this distinction?
Well, this is Stuart Russell's argument, right? We don't know what would happen if we were successful in building this. And I totally agree with Stuart, who's, in my view, is one of the smartest guys and most balanced people on this turf, to say that if we can't figure out what would happen if we are successful, then we should maybe delay our success a little bit to figure that out, right? Because that success may be flipping on us. And how do we actually differentiate in the treatment of this? We don't really know enough about it, and we don't have enough transparency, and we have a lot of, like, what's his name, Yutzkeeper was saying, it may be some lab that accidentally runs across such a solution and rolls it out, because they have received big funding. And these things are all very big things, and we need to ultimately come to some place where we can find a workable conclusion, kind of like, we did that with nuclear weapons, where we said, okay, if you want a nuclear reactor for energy, that's also dangerous, but you have a right to make one if that's what you want, right? But there will be supervision about what exactly you do with the materials, the fission materials in there, right? If you're not building a weapon, so under the disguise of building a nuclear a plant, right? And we were able to actually, to a large degree, make that distinction. And the same is true for genetic engineering, where we had said, okay, you can do this, but not that. I grant you, with AI, much harder, because we're talking about code here, right? We're not talking about physical things, and in many ways, engineering is about code now. But yes, this is one of the biggest challenges, clearly.
I want to go back to the climate change question, because I see Karsten Macholt, sorry I mispronounced the name, has raised a point I wanted to raise as well, which is that people are still denying climate change, even though there are disasters. We may see extreme weather, they'll say, oh, it's just normal extreme weather. We may see fires, they'll say, oh, it's just humans being stupid, not putting fire breaks in, or whatever. So there is still a resistance in some parts of the world. Perhaps the new Trump administration is going to roll back. In the UK, in the last government, they fought against the extension of a zone in London where you had to pay more money if you were emitting worse fumes from your car. And that helped the Conservatives to win at least one by-election, because they were going against the idea that we needed to solve climate change. So climate change is much more complicated, because it's hard to know for sure what is the things that is causing the damage. With the ozone layer and CFCs, it was much clearer. But isn't AI more like the climate change? It's just so hard to keep an eye on things. So how are we going to actually transform? Yeah,
great comment here by Karsten, right?
Yeah,
right. I feel the same way. We are not acting enough. But here's the thing: we are getting very close to acting. so with climate change, we're literally delayed a little bit because of the war scenarios, Ukraine, Russia, Palestine, Israel, and so on, that have sucked up our energy, right? And those issues. But the shit is hitting the fan on climate change, and we have seen nothing yet. as far as action goes, like carbon taxes, civil unrest, and all that stuff is coming. So it may appear like we're not acting, but we certainly are fixing to act. And I always say, if you live in the UK, this Extinction Rebellion is a big deal. We're going to see Extinction Rebellion times 100 in every country. And we're going to see, this is basically imminent, okay? And so, yes, it's true, we're not acting yet, but we're very close to the trigger moment there.
And is climate change AGI part of the new Extinction Rebellion, your initiative, Halt AGI?
That's an interesting point. It could be, but I think that my main argument is it's very similar to climate change in that way, that we may be at the moment where we can still sort of plan how exactly what would happen if we were to succeed, and that point is way past in climate change. We know it's emergency basically, right? And people don't realize this, but when we had the COVID emergency, then all the gloves were off and you were told to do whatever you had to do. You're put to jail if you weren't doing it, and so on and so on. And climate emergency will be exactly the same. We're going to do things that we don't want to do. Like paying for eating meat, for example, right? Or paying a mandatory carbon tax. I predict this is coming. I don't like predictions, but this is one of my predictions. We're going to have a mandatory carbon tax in Europe, 1 or 2% across the board. It's coming, right? And nobody likes this idea, right? But what is the alternative? And I think with AGI, we have the same thing. Everybody wants to have better software, smarter systems, a personal answering machine, that gives you answers and all. These are all good things primarily, right? But we need to be able to control how far that goes. And I think when something happens, like a stock market crash, or air traffic control, or a military incident based on AI intervention or fakeness of AI, right? Then we're going to say, oh shit, and then we move. That is basically what I think will happen. I just hope for that to happen in a way that doesn't cause, 100 million dead people, but just 100 million money spent, rather than actual souls spent. Yeah, let's take some more of the questions, right? Here from people, and you can also chime in together with me, right? Thanks for bringing in people like this. So, which question should we pick? Maybe this one on global collaboration, right? Okay, so by the time there's any hope of agreement, we will have superintelligence, is the fear. And I don't know what you take us on this, but David, you want to?
Well, I think we need to prepare. I think there will be a crisis ahead. And when there is a crisis, the political leaders are going to look around and say, hey, you guys have been thinking about this. What is your solution? And at that stage, we need to be able to show them a positive solution. It is similar to climate change. How do people stop using petrol cars and start using electric cars? When it's convenient, when it's actually cheaper. And it's been similar when solving climate change was portrayed as a sacrifice. Oh, we've got to live in a poorer way. People didn't like it. But when they could see the promise of a powerful, vibrant, new green economy, then people said, yeah, I want to be part of it. So I think it's going to be the same. People are going to say, gosh, AI is more dangerous than we thought. What are we going to do? And at that stage, Gerd and plenty others need to be able to say, well, this is how we can get to that good society we want. It's by constraining AI in these particular ways. So we need to be ready with a well thought through solution, not something that's naive. If we just say, hey, guys, sing Kumbaya, praise blockchain, that's not going to cut it. We need to be a lot more developed than that. And so I think, as people have said, like Wendell Wallach, who's spoken about this, we need to have a bottom-up network of solutions which the politicians, when the crisis comes, will look for. And that's how we might get a quick solution in place rather than things overtaking us.
Yeah, I think, I've been talking about this for 10 years, and you have been at this much longer than I have even. and if you look at Ray Kurzweil, he's been at this for 60 years, right? Pretty amazing. So, however, and Jerome Glenn, for example, right, who's been, I don't know, for 60 years as well, from the Millennium Project, and all really great intelligences there. But, ultimately it comes down to this, as we're realizing, that the strong economic drive of what this does is a key driver in why we're doing this, right? And if we want to address this issue as to why we should do less, or why we should think of a people, planet, purpose approach, then we have to change our economic thinking. And the challenge is right now that economic thinking is 20 years behind our current need for what we actually need. So doing bad things is greatly rewarded on the stock market.
You had a slide that said pause capitalism, but do we really need to pause capitalism? Isn't it a case of constraining capitalism, guiding capitalism, which has happened in the past? There were other instances where big companies, big corporations, big industries were getting out of control, and enlightened politicians with democratic authority broke up some of these large industries. So isn't that what we need, rather than pausing capitalism, which I don't think is accepted?
I was just ripping off the pause AI, pause capitalism, but of course we can't pause capitalism as such. But we need to think about what kind of capitalism we need, right, in the future. And the current capitalism is unfit for this, because if we can make $1 trillion selling AI and eventually AGI, and replacing humans with smart assistants and digital entities and whatever examples from the pitches that I played earlier, kind of scary view there, having your personal, what did, what's his face, Mustafa said, the median human, right? The median human, the average human. So maybe I can marry a median human, and that would be, quicker and easier.
I think that was Sam Altman, that one.
Yeah, but anyway, you're right, the median human. Sorry about that, Mustafa. I'm not doing you injustice there. But so these are economic issues, I think, that are dominating our debate. And if we were able to question them and say, if it's not all just about making money, and believe me, I've been at this juncture in my career many times, to where I said, what am I pursuing here? I'm just going to make as much money as I can by speaking to people who want to fix their business and to explain things to them and have them make more money. Or do I want to talk about what's really important, right? And we make those choices every day. I'm sure you make those choices every day to say that I'm not going to do that gig. I could make a lot of money, but it just isn't what I do, And so these are choices about money versus other things. And we make too many choices about money. And that is what's polluting the whole discussion. Climate change is clear. We will lose all of our money, everything we have, if we don't tackle this. That's already clear. So that motivation exists. With AI, we're thinking like, oh shit, GDP times 5, and most of that will not go to Indonesia and Africa. It will go to us. That's amazing. So let's go, right? And this is a bad motivation, and it may not be an overt motivation from those companies, and they're not evil because of that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's a dominating thought. Power, money, influence, God, this kind of like, I rule things, and this is a very American thought also, and also a Chinese thought. It's kind of an interesting tangent there, but the American thought of saying like, we rule, right? This is exactly what's happening with the Trump campaign. Trump himself didn't say anything about that yet. But now they want to do the opposite of what Biden did, which is the executive order, right? Now it's the Manhattan Project for AI, which is about, you guessed it, money, right? And power. And I think this is just dead wrong. It's not just because of Trump. I think, generally speaking, it's a dead wrong motivation. It will not get us the result we want.
But the track record is that companies start off as non-profit focused. OpenAI was set up by people who did not want to make a profit, particularly. They wanted to build AGI for the sake of the world. But then, in order to continue doing the work they had in mind, they needed to get money coming in. And so they needed to pivot their company from being non-profit and open to being profit-oriented and closed. And these are very powerful forces. Many other people have been in a similar situation. Many people I thought were really good. They had strong motivations. It turns out that when there's a big financial possibility for them, they're able to persuade themselves, hey, this isn't so dangerous after all. Maybe this will be safe. So I think we need to get the governments setting laws here. Governments need to say, if you don't do this, if you don't prove your technology is safe and you release it, you will be subject to enormous fines.
I think there is a question of incentives. Incentives can be spread out all over the range. So one incentive is what people say to you in light of what you are doing, right? So if you invented this, people would say, I think this is really bad to do. So you're inventing this antidepressant drug that everybody's hooked on, or what, people won't like you. And, those are incentives on the social level and social contracts. And all of these things are incentives. We need a lot more of them. That's how we got to the green future, the Green Deal. These are incentives and punishments also. And so I think it will work in a similar way, except for now it's kind of become this sort of accelerationism that's happening, where people are saying we should accelerate because, this is the Chinese people will get there before us. The same argument that the Germans will throw the bomb before us. I mean, what kind of argument is that? And of course, Oppenheimer didn't want to throw the bomb. He just helped invent it. He didn't want to use it against the Japanese, but that's the scientist's kind of point of view. I'm going to do it because it has to be done, and nobody questions what happens if we actually do it. There's a question here from Michael Nushka. I'm going to show this. Okay, so he says, what events may have to happen first in regards to AI development? I see sort of a bunch of trivial options for what happens. For example, if the hiring process is replaced by intelligent scanning machines and interview machines like HireView, where people sit in front of the camera and get interviewed by an AI so that the AI can judge what kind of character I have. That is going horribly wrong, but it's just a really stupid, foolish idea. Just like having the judge replaced by a software that watches the prisoner in jail and makes decisions about probation. It's not just the human, it also doesn't work. and so those things will happen, and they're causing damage. And then of course we have practical things like self-driving cars, those kind of scenarios where that doesn't work until we actually know exactly what to do with it, and many other things, including of course the whole debate about how we can control the financial institutions from becoming the victim of AI-based hypes and misinformation, and these are all like low-lying things. For example, people think about other things differently because they've been carefully manipulated by their environment, anything from YouTube to Twitter to social to even emails, and to think in a certain way, like in a way this happened in the Brexit already, where this whole manipulation about the fear of Turkish people are coming to the UK and all this bullshit. And it's like, and we already had this, now we're going to have more of it. So I think these are all like things that are on a daily agenda, including warfare scenarios of automated weapons being used in Israel. Allegedly, I should say, but seems like that was the case. And then we can say, okay, that's clearly not the way that we should use technology to automate killing, even though there are plenty of arguments that people make why we should, but I think it's ethically, completely, morally abhorrent. Nevertheless, these things are happening. People are building these weapons. So
I think that is a great question. It's basically what canary signals should we identify in advance? Because many people are still saying, well, there aren't really risks from AI, or they're saying AI is bound to be benevolent, but we should agree in ahead of time. Here are things which, if they happen, means, my goodness, we need to change our opinions. Just like the old human miners used to take canaries down the mines because they were more sensitive to the change in gas. So Darren McKee, who's written a very accessible book, Uncontrollable, which I recommend, The Threat of Artificial Superintelligence and the Race to Save Humanity, he lists a number of canary signals, which I think are useful. I can't remember them all off the top of my head. Well, one of them is if we find that AI is deceiving humans, or if we find that AI is accumulating more power and resources for itself, if we find that AI is trying to make money by itself, or if we find that AI is making unexpected backups of itself, these are things which should force us into a different mode, not thinking, hey, this is intellectually possible, but I don't believe it. But my goodness, we've got to get a move on and perhaps pull the plug, perhaps indeed stop AI, AGI.
Well, I think that I thought about the other day a potential scenario where, in a way, if it gets too far, we may have to stop the internet, to allow that to not escalate. And that discussion has been had in many different angles in the past, right? But right now we don't have any authority on this, and I'm really, I mentioned the United Nations before, and they do a fabulous job, and Antonio Guterres is an amazing leader. He speaks the truth, and all these things are good, but the fact is the UN matters less than it did in the 50s and 60s, and who has the power for this? And are we going to empower somebody to say, this is the canary of AI, right? And this is where it gets, and how do we agree? And now, the biggest issue I have now, I work a lot for tech companies, and I realize these are the people who are actually mission control, right? And they don't see it that way, because for them it's like they do just a part of the mission, and everybody else can worry about everybody else, right? But that's not how it works. And when you're mission control, and you're building something like OpenAI wants to build a general intelligence, then they're certainly our mission control, right? And I don't see why a company that's funded in the tune of whatever 25 billion or something should be in charge of the fate of humanity. That strikes me as a really bad idea.
So these tech leaders should be at the table where these discussions are held. We're not going to exclude them. They often have insights about technological possibilities that we don't have. And they may well come to us, the rest of the planet, with proposals and say, well, we'd all like to do this, but we need to ensure that all of us do it rather than people sleeping out, emitting. So one thing I do like that happened recently, and Rishi Sunak, the previous British Prime Minister, deserves some of the credit. They did bring together leaders from multiple walks of life at the meeting in the UK in Bletchley Park in November last year. There was a follow-up in Seoul and also online in May of this year. There's going to be yet another one in, I think, Paris later this year. And that is a venue which we should encourage. It's not perfect by any means, but we're not going to... We shouldn't let the perfect be the enemy of the good here. We should get the people together. We should highlight the risks. So what Yoshua Bengio was doing is possibly the most important thing of all here. He is highlighting in ways that's hard for people to object to. Here are the risks involved. Previously, people said, oh, you're just worried about some weird science fiction scenario. Paperclip maximizer, hey, grow up, you're just a schoolboy thinking about that. But Yoshua Bengio's analysis, which was produced as part of this initiative, it had 90 pages or so of analysis, and it's really hard for anybody who reads it carefully to deny that there are powerful risks here. And so let's get behind this. Let's push people in that direction. It's not the only game in town. We should have multiple approaches, and we should see what works. But this is something that makes me at least a little bit positive that we might manage, even at this 11th hour, the 11th hour and 55th minute, to hold on to control of this technology.
Yeah. I think one of the key issues here with this control is a lot of people saying this is sort of inevitable that this happens, right? And it's inevitable that humans will merge with machines, which is, of course, a familiar story in transhumanism. And so I think these are choices. They're not inevitable. And I think it's not inevitable that the planet will die because of climate change. It's just not. We make those choices, and we decide what they are. And I think some humans will merge with technology because that is what they want, But inevitability of saying that, we can't stop this as a runaway train and stuff. Progress is in a way inevitable, but what exactly it does, it's not. And I think we should also have a better narrative, and this is why I've been working on what I call the good future narrative, is to say, if you're between 20 and 40 years old right now, you have a negative view of the future. Most people do. That's not good. We need a better view of the future, despite of all the conflicts and the geopolitics and the AI and the climate change, especially as I think... who said the other day, Kevin Kelly, right? He says we should be optimistic, not because we have less problems, but we have more capacity to solve them. Yeah, and this is the view that we need to take. And rather than saying, oh my God, I'm going to move to, Tibet somewhere and hide out until it's all over, or live out my last 20 years or something. Yeah, and especially our generation, it is actually our duty, I think, is to make sure we present a future to younger people who are just about to start their careers and their professional thinking as to what they want to do. And hence we're doing this. So I think we're on the right track there. I want to thank you very much, David, for being a guest here and for spending time with us.
Maybe we can address the question of book and literature recommendations, because indeed people may want to understand at a deeper level what the issues are. So there was mention by Alex Pratt earlier about the book by Nick Bostrom, but it is dated in some ways 2014. The three books I point people at, I've already mentioned one, Darren McKee, which is very accessible. He's not a deep AI specialist, but he's taken the time to understand the risks very well. So his book is called Uncontrollable. I also point to the book by Mustafa Suleyman that you've mentioned many times, Gerd. His book is called The Coming Wave, AI, Power, and the 21st Century's Greatest Dilemma. I don't agree with everything he says in it, but I agree, I think, with 95%. And he marvelously explains what the dangers are. It's not just AI, it's a combination of AI and fallible human systems and other technologies, such as dangers in nuclear weapons, dangers in the fabrication of bioweapons. And I also like that he sets out a 10-point plan moving from purely technological through cultural to political and even geopolitical. So I think that's a great way to look. And permit me, sorry, Gerd, I've got to point to this book as well, The Singularity Principles, written by yours truly, which is anticipating and managing cataclysmically disruptive technology. So I have my own 23 principles in here. Now, I don't think any of us have got the complete solution, but I think there is a lot of insight in books like these. Now, Gerd, you've got plenty of material of your own.
Yeah, so if you go to my website, if you go to futuristgerd.com, there's a tab that says books, and it shows all of my latest books on Goodreads and in a Dropmark folder. There's literally hundreds. But I think for right now, I love this book by Stuart Russell, who is really making the argument in an understandable way for a non-scientist, called Human Compatible. And this is the handbook on AI, really, that we should all read, Human Compatible. I like Kim Stanley Robertson, The Ministry for the Future. Great idea, great science fiction story, but also very much reality. Right? And if you believe in in the benefit of being human and actually the potential of humans, you should read Humankind by Rutger Bregman, who talks about why humans aren't evil. And I recommend all of those. But, reading is kind of like, I read a lot of books in parallel. So if you want to really see what I do, I also have a reading feed where I share my notes called Gerd feed. It's a bit of a joke, but so it's GERD and then feed, like feeding, FEED, gerdfeed.com. There's about 75,000 highlights from stuff I've read, and it's searchable. It's a really cool Tumblr blog, and you can see lots of stuff there. So it's like the fire hose of the things I've done. And for me, it's like reading is really crucial. As you know, of course, we are on YouTube, but my YouTube channel has exploded recently with interest, and that's been great. And we're looking to expand on that by doing more shows on these topics. And I want to finish this whole thing by saying, I showed a lot of dark stuff today, and I did a lot of research the last 2 weeks looking at pretty dark stuff. And I want to say, regardless, I think the future is better than we think. I really do believe that technology gives us the key for so many things. The only way we can screw it up is by using it for the wrong thing, and not for agreeing and not for collaborating and going down the wrong path for a long time before we finally find the right path. So we need to pre-act, we need to pre-think, we need to come together, and I think we need more mission control for humanity. Because ultimately that's the destination. We're going to do this together, or we're not going to be together. We're not going to be there, period, as has been said before. And I think that's kind of a strong motivation, I think, for us, because as we all have kids or grandkids or partners, that we know we want them to have a life. And we are at the threshold of 20 years of that. As a big question, like I said earlier, 2030 seems like a likely time of where that could happen. So we got to take some action. So anyway, go to my micro website, HALT, HALT, AGI.com. It's really just a sort of combination of savings, saved items from my YouTube feed and so on. Thanks to David. Thanks to everybody for joining. Thanks to my team for making this happen. We're going to do another edition of this tomorrow, and that's in about 12 hours. So this will be 9 a.m. CET, 8 a.m. UK. For everybody else in Asia, India, because I've gotten a lot of people, there's about 700 people signed up for this one tomorrow, because we don't usually do Asia Pacific time zones, but this will be happening tomorrow. So if you want to join for that, it'll be a similar presentation and different discussion. Thanks very much for being here and for making this possible. Spread the word. We're going to do a nicely edited and trimmed version of this presentation that will go public on my channel, and then the separation of a different track with the two of us speaking as well. So thanks very much and have a good day. Good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.